Welcome to the Serious TV Drama Podcast. I'm Scott, and joining me on this long gestating TV chat, first, the bestest from the Midwestest, it's Jamie. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, good to hear your voice.
And with her, the man who rested his case with the utmost of grace, it's Brian. Hey, Brian.
Hey, how y'all doing tonight?
I know I'm excited to have the two of you here because you'll have to remind me. I don't actually remember the last time all three of us were on a podcast before because I neglected to do the research to look it up.
It's been a while.
No, I've done.
It has been a minute.
Well, we sort of kind of got the band back together again. We got it's three of the Beatles, and we killed off the other one a while ago, just like the real Beatles. Anyway, so this is our now and then podcast. Oh, which means I must be George Harrison because as of late it feels like I've been dying. So, well, yeah. So let's just say I've had some major life distractions that have kept me away from the mic. I mean, I didn't realize this until today. Brian, I literally got massively sick the very day I released our last STVD podcast, which was at the end of August. And apparently I don't know if I let on during the podcast or not, but I was like feeling more and more ill as that recording went on. And then into the night, it got really, really, really bad. And then I took a couple of, tests at 4 and then 4:15 in the morning because, I took two in a row because I didn't trust the first one. And the second
That's
one,
right.
And the second, the first one, the line was light. I was like, oh, maybe it's full. Maybe it's messed up. The second one, line was dark. Oh no, you got it. And I've had a cough from it ever since, which has interfered with the recording before.
That podcast was funny because you had a cough going into that podcast, and you said, fortunately, and hopefully it will stay away. And about 2/3 of the way to that podcast, you coughed, and the dam broke. And
yeah,
I think you muted a few times in that podcast, and I noticed it came on towards the end of the podcast and wasn't there at the beginning.
Yeah, it's kind of like what people say back in the day when you go out drinking and you're like, you don't want to crack the seal of going to the bathroom because once you do, then you're going to keep having to go. So it was the cough version of urination, I guess.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, certainly pissed me off. Bump. Anyway, so back to why we're here. We are returning now. We actually are returning with the first of two back-to-back pods this week. Each one of these is going to cover 3 TV series that have either just finished their seasons or their overall runs. So, let us get this podcast started with the limited series I suspect all 3 of us most wanted to talk about. And by that, I'm talking about The Fall of the House of Usher, the Netflix series that was created, written, etc. by Mr. Mike Flanagan. Now, while the overall series is, of course, a serialized story that both figuratively and ultimately literally follows the rise and, of course, fall of the House of Usher, and by the way, I love that it literally falls, once you get past the first episode, which is titled after the iconic phrase from the opening line of Edgar Allan Poe's 178-year-old poem, for God's sake, The Raven, the rest of the episodes are all named after different Poe stories, and they all, at the very minimum, pay homage to the original works, either through tenuous inspiration or at even times direct adaptation, albeit in a modern setting. After that first episode, which I would say serves, as both prologue and introduction for the plot and premise of the entire series, the House of Usher kind of snaps into this macabre countdown of death as we toggle through time, seeing the origins of how Roderick and Madeline Usher rose to power, and in the modern day when we watch as they're damaged and often morally bankrupt children each meet their death in unique and ultimately rather grisly ways. Now, as I had said online a number of times while I was trying to entice other people to give this series a shot, it's kind of like we were watching the story of Succession, but through the darker lens of Edgar Allan Poe. Now, one difference, of course, is that while true, one of the children is a public relations titan, she's kind of small potatoes compared to the scale of a Logan Roy, and the family fortunes have not been made via media empire, but pharmaceuticals. In fact, one can say a lot of the series is meant to serve as I would say, a rebuke or vicious referendum on the opioid crisis. We'll probably talk a little later about how successful that swing for the fences turns out to be. But finally, and this is probably going to pre-echo something I know Brian wants to talk about as well. I'm sure we're going to talk about a number of people in this cast, a handful of whom I believe do some of their best work, be it in a Flanagan production that they've appeared in so far, or even their overall careers. But I really want to briefly focus on two. Most of the setup and spine of this entire series is a late-night fireside conversation between Roderick Usher, portrayed by Bruce Greenwood, and Assistant U.S. Attorney Auguste Dupin, played by Carl Lumbly. Now, while every character in The Fall of House of Usher, in fact, takes their name either from a character in a Poe story, or even in some cases a person from Poe's life, be it his mother, or even a writer of his era that he detested, the one that merits mention most merits mention, is Dupin, because he's someone who actually appeared in 3 different Poe stories: The Mask of the Red Death, The Mystery of Mary Roget, and The Purloined Letter, which kind of like might be like the biggest Poe story. They don't really get into much in this series compared to all the others, but it doesn't really matter. Now, one can posit that Dupin was actually the original fictional detective. Even if you read those stories, he's never identified himself as such, but he's basically Sherlock Holmes 40 years before there was a Sherlock Holmes. But getting back to these actors, Lumbly and Greenwood are character actors who have knocked about Hollywood for decades. They have more than 80 years worth of credits between them, from the theater to various TV series to plenty of feature work, even voiceovers and animated series and so on. But I think there's something really extra great and fun watching these two aging warriors of words sitting across from one another, setting up a dynamic of direct opposition, as well as the intimacy of two who have known each other for literally a lifetime. At times it's a friendly chat. It's the relating of a ghost story. It's a debate, and it's ultimately a confessional. Both of these men are at the top of their game. Both deserve high praise for those scenes. I would say perhaps more than any others in the entire series. Okay, that's my big preamble. That's my intro for the show, my intro for the podcast. I'm now going to throw it to Jamie and Brian, and then we can get into the specifics of the series. Maybe we might even have a debate about, how some of us feel about Mike Flanagan and his body of work for the last 10 years. I'll go ladies first because Brian was most recently on the podcast. and we didn't figure it out ahead of time. They've both been patiently just watching me, like, all right, tapping their hands like that, as if they had a watch on. And Jamie, I know you've been wanting to talk about this for weeks, so go for it.
Yeah. First of all, huge fan of Flanagan. Started with, 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, he put out The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, and 5 years later, on the exact date of the release of The Fall of the House, we've got a 5-year sobriety chip. And I think that is so awesome that he announced that was his 5th year sober, because watching this and then going back, and I have rewatched everything up to this. After I binged this in like 2 days, like the first 2 days it was out, I binged. But knowing that information and going back and watching this theme of sobriety and addiction that weaves its way through all of his works into this was like perfection. That this was the big enemy, the pharmaceutical company. It was beautiful. And of course, he's got a few good jump scares. But more than anything, Flanagan has a way of making the dark and detestable beautiful. And this was exactly that. Like he didn't miss any beats.
Yeah, I think I tried to put this in context in preparation for the podcast, and my thought about Flanagan and what I find compelling, and I found compelling about this show. A lot of horror is fear of unknown, fear of things we don't understand, and there's an element of that. But a lot of what he deals in is ignoring things. You look at Midnight Mass. The people see what's going on. The Usher family sees what's going on, and they disregard it to their peril. And so, what I think is the psychological horror that he's a master in is he builds dread. That something is going to happen, and it's going to happen not because the devil has come to earth, but because the devil came to earth, showed you his face, and you still wanted to make a deal with him. You look at Midnight Mass, the priest willingly goes to the tomb, makes a deal. The townsfolk willingly go and do this crazy stuff that the priest wants. So I've always enjoyed his slightly different, it's not a matter of, 30 degrees off, but he sort of tilts the angle that he approaches his stories with in that way. And in that way of dealing with the dread, what he does that I find interesting to me, and it's interesting to me in my work and my life's work, and that is he sets up these moments of dread where people have made a deal with the devil, and he spends the time telling you why, and you understand why. You may not agree with them, but he fills out the narrative of his characters to explain why they can't help but drive the car off the cliff and kill themselves. And I think that's what's so I think that's what makes it such interesting viewing to me and so many people. And that element of his work, I really, really enjoy. Some of his earlier stuff, I think some of it was good. It wasn't great. And I'm sure Scott has some opinions on Dr. Sleep that will be shared, knowing Scott is a big Stephen King fan. But his Netflix work, if I was an executive at Netflix, in the same way if I was an executive at FX, I would say, okay, Graham Yost, Noah Hawley, what do you want? Like, I want to keep your work here. If I was Netflix, I would say to Mike Flanagan, hey, when our deal's up, what can we do to keep you here? Because he's been a very compelling person to tell stories that transcend simple humor or simple horror. Simple horror, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Wasn't there some conflict after it was before Midnight Club? I want to say it was Midnight Mass. Wasn't there some major conflict he was having with Netflix that he almost left, or he did leave and came back? They basically wanted to switch like half of the storyline that he had presented, and were pretty demanding on really like inconsequential things like, like your hero character is searching for a job. Why? Well, because he needs to be. He's out of prison. He's back home. He needs to be looking for work. I mean, silly things like this, to the point where he was wanting to just throw in the towel on everything. So somebody there knew what they were losing with this guy and got him to come back around somehow.
Well, I know that Flanagan had a lot of issues with Netflix in regards to the Midnight Club. And actually, unless I'm mistaken, this project, the Usher project, that might actually be his final Netflix project.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think he's I could be wrong about this, but I think he's shifting over to Amazon Prime. I think that's what's going to happen, and it might be as a result of the things that you had mentioned. I don't know the exact details. I mean, one can certainly Google things. He did say, I'm looking at one thing that's mentioned on the webs here, that Flanagan actually took to Tumblr to reveal his plans for a season 2 and did not keep his dissatisfaction with Netflix a secret. Then I see another thing here. According to Deadline, Flanagan and Macy's deal at Netflix is about to be up, and they were exploring other options. Now, that was towards the end of 2022. I see other articles that keep mentioning he's leaving Netflix for Amazon. This is one from Fangoria, which is, famous horror magazine. So maybe that is what's happening here. That is what's going to happen. Here's another one. Horror maestro Mike Flanagan ditches longtime home Netflix for Amazon. Okay. So unfortunately, not unfortunately for us, because we'll still get to experience his work. It just means,
Right.
unfortunately for people who maybe don't have Amazon Prime, well, I guess now you have another reason to go spend even more money. Even though all these streamers are really, I'm thinking about all the people, who a few years ago were all like, I'm cutting the cord because I'm going to save money. Oh, guess what? You got like 5 or 6 streamers right now because Disney's about to shoot up in cost. Apple is going up in cost again. Paramount's going up in cost. Obviously Netflix and Hulu, whatever. It's like, oh my God. Hey, remember that cable bill? I'm the idiot who has all the streamers and never got rid of cable. So I think I'm spending more just on television than anything else in my life. But if you get product like Mike Flanagan, maybe it's worth it. Getting back to the actual series, one of the things I really enjoyed about it, and I'm going to say this, I find that it works in spite of itself, because the structure, if this was a movie, and say it's your average movie length would be what, 2 hour 45 minutes, unless you're, Scorsese or Christopher Nolan, then it has to be like 4 hours or something. But normal people, 2 hour movie, right? And so that therefore you would have to compress this story within a 2 hour time frame, which would mean it wouldn't get to breathe and the characters wouldn't get to really thrive the way they do throughout the series. I mean, thrive until they're dead, at least. But when you do it in an episodic fashion, you kind of, once you get past the second or third episode, you fall into the, okay, I guess and you go like, wait, how many episodes are there? How many kids are there? Okay, I kind of see where this is going for the next several episodes. So basically at the beginning of every episode, it's like, okay, who's going to be the one who's going to go this one? How creative are they going to be with the demise? Obviously there's more stuff going on, not in terms of character as well as plot, whatever. But you know what I'm saying, that
right. But not to mention you go,
Yeah.
What's the name of what Poe work is the name of this episode that this character is involved in?
And how closely are they going to, how closely are they go there? I mean, come on. We knew early on, once they established one of the kids was working on stuff with the heart, it's like, okay, I don't even have to look at the list of titles. There's going to be a Telltale Heart episode here. And they tried to throw us off early on when they have Bruce Greenwood like staring at that brick wall, even though which we know from the get-go, okay, someone's clearly buried behind the wall. That's about as obvious as you can get. They're not even trying to hide that, really. But it's like, no, it's got to be her. It's going to be the beating of the mechanical heart, or whatever the hell the damn thing is. And of course, it's exactly what it is. You couldn't get away from that. There were other things that you were kind of intrigued by. Like, wait, are we going to get monkeys in an episode? And yeah, we got monkeys in an episode for the Murders in the Rue Morgue. I gave him a lot of credit for that. We went that way, even though he quite frankly, I almost wanted him to go a little bit more further with the violence and gore in that episode, because I thought he kind of like, no, I wouldn't mind a little bit of seeing that character's face get ripped off, but whatever.
Still pretty terrifying, though.
Yeah, no, it is. It just, we could have lingered a couple more seconds, but what I'm saying is, generally speaking, if I'm watching again, what was this? Refresh my memory. Was it 8 episodes or 9 episodes? I forget. It's an 8 episode series, right?
8.
8, yeah, because
Yeah.
it's episodes 8, and the kids get killed 2 through 7, which are 6 episodes. Makes sense. 6 kids, 6 deaths. Got it. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like, okay, you're almost tempted to knock something for the predictability of it because, well, we know where this is going, and pretty much you can kind of figure out where it's going to end as well. Because even though I loved it, but I know I laughed out loud when I realized, oh wait, the house of Usher is literally going to fall down. I love that. And I wanted to slap myself because I should have seen that coming like from the get-go when they first were going into that house. Like, oh, that house can't last long. I didn't know they were going to go poltergeist on us.
Yeah, as I was thinking about some of the other through lines that I really, you just brought it to my mind. I mean, gosh, what a turn Bruce Greenwood gets in this movie. I mean, a really, really solid actor that's done a lot of great work. But, I mean, he really gets a big, meaty role here to play. And I think, Flanagan's done a really good job of sort of grabbing some of the underappreciated actors that don't get to shine and finding newer people to populate his cast with. I think what's the guy's name? I'm sure Jamie knows it. The kid from Friday Night Lights that was in Midnight Mass, the guy home from prison. What's the actor's name, Jamie? You remember?
No, I don't remember.
Give me 1 second. You're talking about Zach Gilford.
Yes, Zach Gilford.
Yep.
I mean, that guy sort of been a little MIA for a while and got a really good role in that. And whatever talent he has, he makes really, really good use of. And but Fall of the House of Usher, I mean, I was so excited to see it. And like you, Scott, I thought, what can be done with Poe? And I mean, this was like seeing a really great cover band that didn't dress up like the original artist and ape them, but like played the songs, but played them in like with their own feeling and their own emotion and put their own spin on it.
Right.
Because he didn't just do a tribute band to Poe. He actually really used the inspiration of Poe and stayed true to it, but told the story with staying true to what Poe was about. And I mean, you have to think, I mean, he dedicated the whole thing to the through lines of Poe and was so true to so much of it that it's really quite shocking to see that amount of dedication to, somebody who probably kids today, I don't know if kids today read Poe. I mean, I don't know if high school kids read Poe. I did. I'm sure you did.
My 8th grader read Telltale Heart about 2 months before this came out. So it's kind of opened the door for him to be more interested.
Cool.
I know that it's like a cliche thing to say, but the sentiment that it's like a love letter to his work is probably pretty appropriate in this situation. He did everything, it seemed, to honor it, all the way down to just like wrapping up the entire show with Spirits of the Dead, like doing the narration of Spirits of the Dead at the end. And it was great because there's a handful of those, maybe 2 or 3 of these stories that I never did read, but it was great to be reminded of all of them and like how cool they were the first time I read them and how they were kind of like the first like literature that I really remember having like, a twist. There's always things they didn't quite see, but then it made total sense and it felt so real. And he was able to, even with all of these like crazy ideas, was able to still like contain that and bring it all the way through the story where it's like everything seems just a little bit crazy, a little bit over the top, but then also like, no, that seems like it would track. That I can see this being real. Maybe because he holds on to the reality and the pain of situations. He doesn't like try to soften it up or make it anything other than it is. But that's something that Edgar Allan Poe always did, was able to take the like parts of your brain, like you were talking about earlier, that we avoid, and laying it out and being like, this is just part of who people are. This is just you. This is how things are.
Yeah, I think that Flanagan fully embraces things that are bittersweet, and
Yes.
I think back to I mean, how many sort of poignant bittersweet moments have been in these series, and the haunting of Hill House, and the sense of loss and grief. And I think back, I mean, two of the most soul crushing things, I think of Zach Gilford's character in The Woman in the Boat in Midnight Mass, out in the water. And in this, I mean, kudos that he didn't make, what a lot of horror people would be, and that's the sort of torture porn of just killing people by numbers. But, in the end, where the Mask of the Red Death character takes the young girl, and, like, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I didn't see that coming. And it kind of shocked me for a second when she started talking to her. I thought, oh, like maybe there's some way out, and there just wasn't. And true to the deal she made with with the brother and sister, she took his granddaughter, and
the deal.
I thought that was a great twist.
But still at the end she had honor, which is kind of a funny thing to think about. But she honored the deal, and she honored this young soul's place in the world, and allowed her to leave painlessly and gracefully. That was a big tear-jerking moment. But it meant something. It wasn't just like, oh my gosh, this is sad. It's like, oh my God, this means so much. Like, this is meaningful. Everything that happened up to this point, she's telling why. Why this is meaningful, without saying this is meaningful because is beautiful.
Yeah, it's the one death of an innocent in the entire production, as far as I can recall, at least to my best of my recollection. And once we find out what that deal is, via the flashbacks and whatever, one has to know, like, oh, that means the granddaughter. So I was waiting for that. I was like, there's no way around that. And it's like, she's the only one who doesn't deserve it, because everyone else pretty much, and some characters who initially might have not seemed so bad, but then as this series wore on, they became like the Henry Thomas character, Frederick Usher. How he goes from being kind of a schmuck to just pretty kind of pure evil, where he ends up. So that, in a way, he almost has. I was joking with my friends about, which of the demises did we enjoy or whatever the most, and we went back where what. The Henry Thomas one might be, in some ways, the best one, because it's the one that's going to that was taking the longest, Verna sitting with him and talking with him, and unlike all the others, that was the first time she had encountered him, that we saw her, whereas all the others, she somehow became a little part, a thorn in their side, or part of their lives, whether it was as the patient for, what was her name? I have it all in front of me. Victor, she was like the patient for Victorine, or she was the person from the ASPCA, whatever type thing for Leo, or and so on and so forth. But it seemed like this was the one that she actually had some enjoyment or relished, because of the awful things he had been doing right up until that very moment. and the fact that they came up with a very creative way to pull off the pit and the pendulum. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's really something. Well done, Mr. Flanagan. Well done. And I have to mention, so we're talking about some of the performers, like you were talking about Zach Gilford. And one of the nice things, or things I find really enjoyable about what Flanagan's been doing with these multiple series, is that he's invested in a specific troupe of actors. This is a tradition that goes all the way back to, I think of, Orson Welles and, the Mercury Theater players and how you'd use those actors all the time, right up through people like Scorsese and other people who use the same kind of actors quite often. Carla Gugino,
Yeah.
whatever, who plays Verna.
Mhm.
And I've seen her in a lot of other things over the years, good and bad, whatever. I think this might be
Rocking
her.
with Pauly Shore back in the day.
I think this is her best thing. This is the best I've seen her. I think I liked her more in this than any other previous Flanagan work. And I think it was a very interesting and at times perhaps even difficult role for her, I think, but I think she really pulls it off. And by the way, I don't know how many episodes it was before I realized that Verna, you rearrange the letters, it's the Raven. It's like, oh wait, because she's the Raven who's at the beginning and at the end. She's Raven. Ah, that's so smart.
Yeah, and I think another shout out that we've got to give. I mean, out of nowhere, we get a really cool performance by Mark Hamill.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. What a great character.
Yeah. Another guy who goes down with honor, he served the Ushers.
Yes.
He doesn't make a deal with her. He may be their shady fixer, but he's their shady fixer. And he'll go, he'll keep his mouth shut and go to prison. He's not taking the deal. But that character of just being like, you need something done, he'll go do it. I loved his character. I thought he was a great addition to the cast. I thought he was wonderful in this.
I felt he stole almost every scene he was in, even if he had minimal participation in the scene. And granted, there is a part of it, especially for the geekier among us, who are just, you get a little almost goosebumpy with joy, like, look, it's Mark Hamill, and he's doing something like this. It's so cool. Because, we know he's a talented dude, especially when it comes to his voice work and whatever. And of course, he's iconic as Luke Skywalker. But geez, he just, yeah, and you're right. The scene, I'll just say it now. My favorite scene in the entire thing is the scene between him and Verna at the house. They have the conversation. There have been hints about this, around the world expedition he was part of, and they still never give us all the information. And I really enjoy that they did that. I love that they did that, because I think we get enough. And we can just fill in those little gaps ourselves, and perhaps come up with the most something even more horrible. It's almost Hitchcockian in that way, where the more you imagine of how bad something might be, it really works. And yeah, he's a thief who does honor with honor, as opposed to, well, quite frankly, most of the family for that matter. So yeah, you're absolutely right to point him out. I totally agree with doing that. Y'all talked a lot about Flanagan and his work, and I had mentioned at the top, I wouldn't say there's going to be a debate. I don't think that's what's going to happen here at all. I am a fan of his work as well. I just, maybe it's because there's very few creators, if any, that I think don't have, there's issues with things here and there. That's just par for the course. And the more you do, the more likelihood you're going to find that. Don't care if what writer or director or actor, whoever you are. I still think, even after all this time, I'm still going to go that Haunting of Hill House is still the best thing he's done for Netflix so far. This is close. This was very good. This was close. But I think that's just perfect. And maybe it was just the surprise of it also helped with that as well. Because I went into that other than knowing about the original story, whatever. And I think the fact that was later followed by The Haunting of Bly Manor, which I actually think of all of them is the least of his work. While there's really nice moments and it certainly looks beautiful and some good performances too, But as a story and being satisfied with it, I just never really cared for it that much. I didn't hate it. I was just like, okay. Like if I had done what Jamie did and did a rewatch, I would probably skip that one. Personally, I probably was like, nah, I can move on to the next one. I'd rather watch. My only issue with Midnight Mass was I had issues with the final episode, and I thought people were being stupid. And I don't like watching movies or TV shows where I think characters are being needlessly dumb. But everything else about that series was so good, I was willing to forgive it because it wasn't a horrible final episode. It wasn't like the first season of the O or something like that. But but I just felt the most disappointing episode of the entire series was the final episode, and that's my issue with Midnight.
You defeat vampires by doing a dance where you all form a cross. That's how you defeat vampires.
Yes. No, this whole I'd be like, wait,
flash mob fighting.
This whole island. Wait, this no one has a basement anyway. Have you know anything about vampires? Oh no, the sun's give me a break.
And I just have to say, Scott, there is one thing that we have to talk about.
Okay.
And this is my last point, so we can move on, because obviously Jamie and I can talk about this ad nauseum. But does Mike Flanagan have a problem with cats?
Oh my God. You know, I have another friend, and she doesn't watch that much stuff, but she really likes a good horror movie or horror story. She likes being scared, whatever. However, there's one thing she does not like, and she will not watch if she knows about it ahead of time. And she'll get very upset if she doesn't know about it and then it happens. She doesn't like seeing cruelty to animals, and specifically and especially cats. Cats and dogs probably too, but she is a cat person. That's her thing. I remember I was watching Midnight Mass, and I was all ready to be recommending that to her. And then you had the shoreline of it. I was like, nope, she'll be out. Nope. I'm watching this. And we're going, episode by episode. I'm like, excuse me. Oh, there's the cough again. And I was like, oh, I bet she'd really dig this. She probably knows Edgar Allan Poe too. I don't know how big a fan she is, but she's a big reader and a literature. She's an English teacher, blah, blah, blah. And then the cat episode the episode before the cat episode, when we found the dead cat, that alone made me go, oh no. Like, okay, it's brief. I was like, but it's brief. We didn't actually see it happen. Maybe I can still. And then the next episode happened. And then there's the moment with the thumbs. and the cats. It's like, nope. All right. Can't watch this one either.
It can't happen.
It
reminded me of, do you guys remember the old miniseries, the Tales from the Dark Side?
Oh, of course.
It was like the 80s. And there's the one story with the cat where at the end the cat ends up jumping down the throat of the man in the wheelchair. God. I just remember that scene. It haunted me when I was a kid. In this entire episode, I kept going, oh my God, that cat's going to jump down his damn throat. It's going to happen.
I think for some reason, other than the opening and the guy saying, but there is a dark side. The only episode I remember that show to the life of me, I think there's one where Jerry Stiller is playing like this really nasty, mean radio talk show host, and it's just him in the chair. And as it goes on, he's slowly becoming basically a monster or the devil or something. I don't remember what the point was. Like, okay, he's a bad guy. Oh, and he turned into a devil. All right. Wow. Is Twilight Zone on next? Can I watch that now, please? The only other thing I would have mentioned, which I thought was kind of funny about the series as I noticed it, because I know that Rahul Kohli, who plays Leo Usher, had been in a couple previous what am I trying to say? Flanagan series. I already seen him before. But then when they also brought in, let's see if I have his name at my disposal. Please tell me I do. And if I don't, oh, look at that. I did a screenshot of the cast. to be ready for this. And the one guy who's not here, I got Carl Lumbly as Dupont, but I meant the actor who plays the younger version, and I don't have his name in front of me, and that's to my regret, because I wanted to point out that both he and Rahul Kohli are both from iZombie, the show that used to be on CW. And they're like two of the three. That's like two of the three main characters. So I got to think what's her face is going to show up in the next one just to get all three of them. The one, I guess she's on that Ghost show or something now. I can't think of what her name is off the top of my head. Is it? I want to say Rose McIver, but I don't know if that's what her name is or not. All right, so I think we've covered it pretty well. We gave it about as much time as I thought we were going to, because I know that it was the one that we most wanted to talk about. So we are really gonna change gears, pace, genres, whatever, for something that I hadn't planned on talking about until this very week, and I decided, you know what? Let's talk about it. It's a little show on Apple TV. I actually discussed this all by my lonesome on a little solo podcast I did a couple of years ago. But now I get to talk about it with at least one or two. I don't know if you both watch or not. I know one of you do. And I'm talking about The Morning Show. The Morning Show, which is on Apple TV. Obviously the show with Renee Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston. And if anyone's wondering creator-wise, because I always like to look up who's behind these shows. Because, we spent a lot of time talking about Mike Flanagan, and that, just so it's always good to know who did the other things we're going to talk about. People behind the show, Jay Carson, who basically comes from House of Cards, and Carrie Aaron, who had been the producer of Friday Night Lights and Bates Motel. Does that give me any hint about what The Morning Show is or should be like? None whatsoever.
No, not even a little.
I'll just start off this like this, and then I'll throw. I can toss it to Jamie, I guess, again. The first season of the show, which is the one I talked about on an old podcast, I really enjoyed the first season quite a bit. I thought it was a very cool and fascinating take on what had been happening in our culture with the Me Too movement, and how figures in media and what they try to get away with. And it goes all the way to the days of Matt Lauer and Charlie Rose and all the others. And I thought the casting was really spot on, especially when they had Steve Carell on that series. It's like, that's the perfect person for that part, because, generally so likable. So when he turns out to be a scumbag, or it works so well for it. I, however, was not a big fan of the second season of the show. I'm not saying it was a bad season. I'm saying it wasn't very good, because there were at least two major storylines that really either I thought were a big total waste of my time and should not have been done in the first place. That would be the Steve Carell one. Or B, I just didn't believe it, and I had a hard time with every scene that happened. And that was the ongoing relationship between Renee Witherspoon and the Juliana Margulies character in season 2. I got lured to season 3 because some guy named Ham was going to be on. And I was like, I like ham and Swiss. I like a good roast ham, and I like a good John ham. I give it a shot. I give it a shot. And I'll say that, and I'm going to do a Brian now. And let me say this. One of those two things I mentioned from season 2, which I thought was really done poorly or bad, I think they kind of reversed it in season 3. I really actually liked all the Margulies and Witherspoon stuff throughout the season from beginning to end. Why it worked so well this season as opposed to the previous season? Yes, one can point to the different conflicts that were going on, or that flashback episode, which was really, I think, one of the best episodes of the entire series. Maybe that really helped it as well. I think that really, you saw the rise and fall of a relationship as well as others in that episode. But I thought, I believed it this time. I saw what they could see in each other. I saw why it would work and why it ultimately didn't work. And that was the thing that kind of, that stood out as one of the things that really impressed me about the season, because they took something that I hated in the previous season and they made it something I really appreciated in this season. So I'm going to take my foot off the brake, off the pet, whatever, and not do what I did with the previous one. And Jamie, I'll let you tackle this one next if you like.
Sure. First of all, Billy Crudup. That's it. Billy Crudup, Billy Crudup, Billy Crudup. Every scene with Billy Crudup, I am 100% invested. My God, he is so fun to watch. The way he delivers dialogue is, it's so fast. It's like a ping pong ball thrown in a small room. It's so fast, and it bounces off, and it's great. I really, really love Greta Lee in this. Her character, Stella Bach, is very intriguing and interesting, and the challenges that she's facing in this season on becoming successful, but like battling am I going to be one of those people in order to become successful? I'm like you. The relationship with Laura and Bradley in this season is, for whatever purpose, far more believable and important and meaningful. I really liked this season. I liked the last 3 episodes of season 2. I wasn't as much of a naysayer on it, but it's not what season 1 was. But the last couple episodes were good, but this season nailed it. First episode to the last episode, I thought every single one was interesting. And also really weird to me that Paul Marks and Jennifer Aniston would have so much chemistry, but they really did.
I love that you refer to one by the character name and the other by the actor.
Right, and by the other one by the actor's name.
I don't know if that's a credit to John Hamm that you saw him as Paul Marks and not John Hamm.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Whereas Jennifer Aniston is always going to be, well, it's Jennifer Aniston.
She's just Jennifer Aniston. Anything.
Now, for my turn, Jamie made me watch this. And she made me watch it because she said, "Have you watched the morning show?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And she's like, "Oh, well, I wanted to talk to you about something." So, of course, it piqued my interest, and I started watching it. So I've watched all 3 seasons up until like the middle of season 3. I started and watched it all, and then finished with the weekly rotation of the last few episodes. So I don't have a long view. I have a fairly compressed view on the show. But I will recount a few of the things I texted Jamie once she made me watch it. Okay.
You two are so cute, bastards.
One of the things I said to her was that I know you didn't like it, but I think this show does a better job, I think, at redemption than some other things I have seen. I'll be curious how, if it has a 4th season, Bradley gets redemption. Because Bradley, I go up and down on. Sometimes I'm frustrated with her. Sometimes I like her. I love Corey. I mean, I think I texted Jamie, like, I could just watch Corey all day. Like, Corey is amazing.
Yep.
I thought really great this season, since we're talking about that. I thought there was a little more space for Nestor Carbonell and Nicole Bahari as the new, hosts of the morning show. And I thought they both had really good roles in what they did. I liked both of them a lot. Mm-hmm. And it took me a while to realize, I didn't know where I'd seen Nicole before, but she was Sleepy Hollow, and was on an episode of Black Mirror.
Yes.
But I like the two of them a lot. I like the producer that had slept with Steve Carell. I forget her name. That was promoted to the Mia. Running.
Mia.
Yes, Mia. Yeah. And I mean, I'm a sucker for some Mark Duplass, man. Like I'm a sucker for that guy. Like, the the tousled hair, overworked, underpaid producer who follows around. But the thing that bugged me the most, the thing I don't like about it, is I just don't like Aniston, and maybe it's a me thing, but I feel like even on this show, and maybe it's a statement about this world, that she seems so transactional in everything, that maybe that's how I'm supposed to look at it, is she, life makes her be transactional, and I'm supposed to forgive her a little bit. How many warnings does she get for all the things she does, and she ignores them all because she knows best and ends up in trouble. So a couple of the storylines, I thought this season tried to maybe dip its toe in Succession waters. Anyone else feel that, and even hear music that made you think of Succession in the last couple episodes?
When you're dealing with someone, you're dealing with a billionaire, you're dealing with a boardroom vote, and you're dealing with taking over a media. I mean, that's basically Succession. Something like this kind of really reveals just how good Succession is, because
right.
It's not in that league, but that's
it's not. But I tell you what I liked the most, because it surprised me. And that is, towards the end, there were two turns by Paul Marks, John Hamm, where he was both incredibly menacing, and then incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I love that guy. We all love that guy. We all know he can do distant, cold, vulnerable, personable. Personable, likable, affable. But I don't know I'd ever felt menaced by him the way he pulled off some menace towards the end of that season.
Yep.
And it makes me hope that maybe we see some of that in Fargo.
Yeah.
Interesting. He is. I believe he's the main. I think he's the main protagonist in this season of Fargo, unless I have that wrong. I think it's like a father-son duo that are the protagonists in this. It's him and one of Jamie's favorites, the kid, or I guess he's not really a kid, but the dude from Stranger Things. Actually, we both talk about. I talked about that.
Is it Finn?
Yes. No. Steve.
Oh, Steve.
Okay.
Okay.
Steve. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm fascinated to see that dynamic, and how, and in fact, I keep seeing pictures with John Hamm with a big old 10-gallon hat. I'm kind of enjoying that too, because basically when you see an actor, and of course someone like John Hamm. I just watched 10 episodes of this, and then there's Kimmy Schmidt, and there's when he would appear on a bunch of other things, or Saturday Night Live, whatever. Yep. But there's still my brain still locks in on Don Draper. So when you see him with a cowboy hat, I'm like, oh look, John Hamm's playing dress up in here. Yeah. Did he get a little hat for his Hamaconda too? Anyway, speaking of, well, maybe not speaking of which, it's funny how you mentioned how you didn't like Aniston's character, right? I was talking about this with a friend of mine, Tiffany, who I usually talk Survivor with, as I've mentioned to Jamie a number of times. And no, not the Tiffany who appeared on this podcast a million years ago. There's a different Tiffany. I know like 3 Tiffany's. She watches this show, and she was talking about it with me. And for her, she actually doesn't like either Jennifer Aniston's character or Reese Witherspoon's character. She just likes all the other characters. And I was rooting for Paul Marks over the other two. It's my favorite character of the season. And I said to her, well, this is why you and I always only root for the villains on Survivor. This is the kind of people we are. Uh, and I really did enjoy John Hamm's character on this, and you basically hit exactly where I would have went, because those were the moments that made me go, ooh, I haven't seen that before to that extent. I mean, there can be a couple, if you go back in time, there are a couple kind of almost oddly chilling moments with Draper and Mad Men, but nothing like that, you know. You mentioned Mark Duplass. Mark Duplass has just cornered the market on just basically, even though Chip is probably the most affable version, he basically specializes in playing assholes. I mean, because by the end of the day, Chip is still kind of an asshole. You know, he may be an asshole that we root for at the end, especially with his whole diatribe on the morning show, which is kind of beautiful. But it's like, yeah, I think that's his thing. I think that's his thing. Because he'll go back to the League, king of the assholes,
But he's your asshole.
Right.
Right.
I don't know where your eyes are.
Right.
I
don't have an ass. I have a Duplass.
Oh God! And the character he played on that season of Goliath that one time, where he's like super creepy asshole. Yeah, like I said, it was an enjoyable season. You know, they definitely, I like how they kind of touch on actual news events that have happened and how they kind of work them into the storyline, which works because it's either be the morning or evening news. This is a news program. So either be everything with January 6th or even how they dealt with COVID in the previous season and going into this season as well. Or other things that kind of like, oh, that happened. Oh, the Roe v. Wade kind of overturned situation that of course has to play a big part. And I love how they made that such a major thing because it's happening at the same time where the big reveal of, that Alex is clearly has a situation going on with Paul Marks and so on and so forth. Yeah, it was a very enjoyable season. They actually renewed it for a fourth season several months ago, before the season even debuted. It was already
probably
renewed.
Before I even knew and watched it.
Probably. It was April. So yes. At least, well, I don't know. I don't know when you two are talking to. No, I'm just kidding. I also like seeing Holland Taylor, by the way. I'm always been a Holland Taylor fan. She actually ends up being a surprise appearance and several appearances in a show I'm going to be talking about towards the end of this podcast. But she always has a nice presence to her, and I really enjoy her on this. I love her interactions with Billy Crudup. I love how the two of you really raved about Crudup and the Corey character. I don't necessarily disagree, even though it would be better for the podcast if I did. But I look at him as, it's funny. You have John Hamm on the show, who's famous for being Don Draper, who's a guy who came from an ad agency. And Billy Crudup's Corey. In everything he does, the way he talks, whether it be the speed or the type of the language he uses, he's constantly selling. He's a salesman.
Yes, he is.
That's all so every line and what's interesting about that is that then what makes him an interesting character to me, at least, is because that's the way he is. You can never be sure how sincere he is. And I think that's the way people react to him, characters react to him. So they don't know, is he being honest? Because if everything you say sounds like a lie, does that mean everything you say is a lie? Or maybe it's just a misperception and everything you say is true. I think that's kind of, for me, what makes him a really interesting character. And it's like, because yes, we see moments of vulnerability or whatever, but he has more of a veneer to him than the characters who are the on-air talent, who are the ones who you think are supposed to have that veneer. Like Alex or Bradley are the ones who should have that, and they don't. He does. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was one of the really interesting things about the series from the get-go. I mean, going back to season 1 all the way straight through to this season. And even though it was maybe not, edge of your seat, oh my God, cliffhanger ending, there are a lot of open questions, and so I am glad that they are going to come back for a fourth question, as in what's going to happen to Bradley as far as the FBI situation, because I'm trying to see a believable way that she could possibly return to being a news person. I mean, it's a fictional show, so they can probably get away with whatever they want because they can point to other news anchor types that had some sort of scandal in their lives, and then were able to return to some sense of a job, whether it be, Dan Rather once upon a time with the false reporting with the Vietnam thing, whatever, or even Brian Williams, had his whole issue and he left NBC News, but then he came back and was working on MSNBC, whatever. So you can make a comeback, I guess. So I guess that's the route they can take. And what's going to happen with Corey? Because the way this ended, I was like, okay, feels like Corey's kind of out of a job, but we don't know. So yeah, I am looking forward. And I think every season they're probably going to they have to bring in that one additional major character. Because, especially when we go into this season, because you weren't going to have the Steve Carell thing anymore because, dead. So you replace that with the John Hamm character. And I think that really helped because you provide us with someone who's initially or instantly likable, but then turns out to be more of an antagonist than you realized, which sounds a little bit like the Steve Carell character if you think about it. And they both kind of do horrible things. Carell might be a little worse in that regard because of what ended up happening. I also like them also touching on the character who had committed suicide in season 1 and that having that moment. So I felt there was so many things I really liked. I love seeing Tig Notaro just being Tig Notaro because that's what she does. She's the same character and everything she does. It's just a different outfit. She's either wearing a Starfleet uniform or she's wearing a suit, whatever. But and she knows that, and I think she's made fun of it herself. She's a helicopter pilot for some zombie thing for Zack Snyder. But it's basically Tig Notaro.
It's like Tig, can you turn the deadpan up to 8?
Oh my God, but she's so enjoyable to watch.
She is.
I almost wanted them to give her more sarcastic lines in this. I just would have enjoyed it that much more. But yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I was pleasantly surprised because usually when I get turned off from a show, it's hard for it to hook me back in. And and as far as the two leads, I'll be honest, I've not watched the show for 3 seasons. And maybe this is a good thing. I still haven't made up my mind how I feel about either one of them. And maybe it's because, and I'm going to give them credit rather than take it away, it's because of their storylines, it's because the situations kind of make me go back and forth on them, which almost makes them more real to me as a result. So, if you ask me right now, do I like the Alex character and Jennifer Aniston? I don't know. Do I like the Bradley character? I don't know. I thought... Overall, here's where I'm probably going to just, for whatever reason, going to be different. I actually tended to like Alex more than I like Bradley because I think I just found Alex to be a more believable character, and Bradley at times I didn't quite buy the character at times. The righteous do-gooder thing didn't play believable to me at times. The show, as much as hard as they tried to make it work for me, but overall, they're always compelling to watch, and that's why I watch the show. And that's why I think it's a good show. So there you go.
Imagine that you like the woman from New York, and I like the woman from West Virginia. That's so shocking, being from Kentucky, that I like her better.
So weird.
Go figure.
Go figure.
I'm kind of in the same place with the leads, a little bit. I think not a huge drive of the storytelling in this show is that the moral line is always moving. And I think that Aniston's character has an understanding that the moral line is always moving and she's willing to move with it. And Bradley's is she can see that the moral line is always moving, and out loud she says she's not okay with it always moving, but what she does shows that she's going to move the damn line and go in the wrong direction if she needs to. So one's owning who she is a little bit more than the other one.
I sort of disagree with you, and here's
Think
why.
so?
Yeah, Aniston needs Chip to see the line.
Yeah, like he's yeah.
He's
fair.
He's like the angel on her shoulder to do the right thing most of the time. He's not an angel, but he is the voice she needs to hear oftentimes to get things right. And that's what a good producer should be, like
yeah, that's true.
I think Bradley's innate sense of the right thing is far superior to her. She saw through Paul Marks.
Oh yeah, I do not disagree with any of that. I just think that Aniston's character is like, yeah, well, this is what it takes to get the job done. This is what we do.
I'm going to.
But I feel like Bradley's more.
Bring it.
Here's the thing. The setup of the show, the setup of these two characters from season 1 right through to now, but more so season 1, and that's where it kind of was an inspiration, I believe. It's all about Eve. Because Bradley is basically Alex 20 years earlier.
Yes.
Bradley is also and Bradley's on that same track. So, and as far as doing the right thing or whatever, well, yeah, except Bradley's the one who actually committed actual crimes and did some really kind of fucked up stuff. And yes, I understand it's to save her brother, and maybe I can't relate because I don't have siblings and wouldn't care to. And I know but or maybe, and
I wouldn't care to.
And maybe it's because we find out, oh, she turned in her dad. Whatever. You know what? I'm more likely to lean towards a character who, here we go with the New York, West Virginia thing. I'm also going to lean more towards a character who has a bit more of an acidic and cynical side to her than the wide-eyed fucking moron who should fucking know better at this point. If I had to watch, okay, now I'm going to get mean. If I have to watch her cry in a scene and whining to fucking Juliana Margulies one more time, I was like, she should be breaking up with you not because of what you did, because of right now. You get out of that. No, it just was annoying the fuck out of me. So yeah. Yeah, you know what? I've changed my mind. I've actually changed my mind. I've made up my mind about her. I don't like her. I don't like her.
See?
And you know what else? She wasn't even a good June Cash either. Take that. Anyway.
You know what? See, you needed me, Alex. You're welcome, Chip.
Last good thing she did was election. Anyway. Legally blonde hair up my ass. Anyway. With all that said.
Now something completely different.
Well, this will actually be probably a far, and perhaps thankfully, a briefer conversation. Maybe because only one or two of us have seen the series, and maybe because I've looked at the clock and I have a time limit I've set for this podcast in my head. So the third and final series we will be discussing this evening, albeit briefly, will be Billions, which was created by Brian Koppelman and David Levine, not Levine. I thought, or Levine, because I thought maybe I did a typo. No, it's spelled Levien. What the fuck? Don't know. These two guys were previously best known as the screenwriting teams on movies like Rounders and Ocean's 13, and they co-created the series along with Andrew Ross Sorkin, which is interesting because he was formerly a New York Times reporter, also a CNBC show host. He's the dude who wrote the book Too Big to Fail. And you got to figure that his knowledge and everything really factored heavily into the making of this series. Now, look, there's been a handful of series I've been told by any number of people, any number of times over the years, I really need to check out. And they're shocked that I haven't. Usually they're Showtime shows because I'm like, I don't want to watch Showtime show. And there's a bunch I still have not gotten around to it. One of these days I'll watch Shameless, but still haven't, whatever. But one series I heard about a number of times was Billions. And maybe it was my anti-Showtime bias, which makes no sense. I don't know why I have that. And up until a couple months ago, I didn't even know that show was even still on. I thought it ended like years ago. I wasn't still on. I decided just on a random evening, you know what? That show, it's got that Paul Giamatti guy on it. I love a good Paul Giamatti role. I'm going to check it out. And then within about 2 or 3 weeks, I blasted through 80 plus episodes of Billions. I literally caught up to the show when it was hitting its 81st episode. So I love I always look at what the plot synopsis is for television series when you, on the IMDb. So I'll just give that here, even though I think it's more applicable to the first 5 seasons and really not so much after. They describe it as Billions is a complex drama about power politics in the world of New York high finance. Ooh, it's in New York. I must like it. Shrewd, savvy U.S. attorney Chuck Rhodes and the brilliant, ambitious hedge fund king Bobby Axelrod are on an explosive collision course, with each using all of his considerable smarts, power, and influence to outmaneuver the other. The stakes are in the billions in this timely, provocative series. Okay. Now, I went through all those seasons, episodes, and the 6th season I thought was somewhat unsatisfying compared to the previous 5, and I think that was due in large part. You lost who I personally felt was actually the main character of the series. He was like taken off the board. It would be like watching a season of The Sopranos without Tony Soprano. But Damian Lewis, and that's an actor I always thought was kind of decent, if a bit understated. I know him primarily from Band of Brothers and Homeland. And I know and I remember him playing Steve McQueen in that brief moment in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I know he's been in some other shows that I haven't seen. Was it Life or something? Was that what it was called? With this character, though, the way he embraces his inner machismo, and the main joy of the series is just watching him either square off or even occasionally aligning himself with the always impressive and aforementioned Paul Giamatti. But when we pushed into the 7th season, they really had done such a nice job of continuing to layer and build up an unstoppable adversary with Corey Stoll's Michael Prince character. This is the character who essentially bested Bobby by the end of season 5 and pretty much kind of took over the series for most of season 6. And then when you get to season 7, as we get through episode by episode, all these people who have sided with him, counselors, cronies, whatever, they all end up inspiring a certain amount of animus in the viewer. I mean, heck, the lawyer, Kate Sacker, the one who used to work with Chuck Rhodes before going private and working for Prince, does such a heel turn, such a massive heel turn, seemingly does such a massive heel turn. You almost want to see her aspirations and dreams crushed more than Michael Prince. But when we get to the finale, I'll just say, look, I mentioned at the get-go 2 of these 3 creators, and one of them is actually the showrunner for the show. They made their bones on scripts like Ocean's 13. I didn't know these guys I never really took the time to do a dive on the show while I was watching it until I was writing notes for this podcast. But if you knew that going into it, then you should guess, I bet there's going to be a long con at work here, which there certainly is and was. But I got to give the show credit that, in my opinion, or let me just say, they actually, I felt, stuck the landing with a pretty all-encompassing and satisfying payoff. And it worked. I was like, okay, I like where this ends. A lot of times we talk about TV or movies, but more TV on this podcast. And I don't mind if I am left wondering about certain characters and where they're going to go and what's going to happen, whatever. And we don't really have that much at the end of this series. We pretty much can see where they're all going to be going, and we're fine with that. But I'm fine. I don't need another season. I think it's good. I'd like to ask Mr. Giamatti to grow his facial hair back because I like him better beardy. But, but other than that, I mean, I know, Brian, you actually have watched the show, so I guess I should stop talking, let you, I actually don't even know what your opinion is of it now that I think about it. So,
I liked it. I thought it was a semi return to form. I thought Corey Stoll did a good job as a foil, and they'd been building him up for a little while as the foil, the rising star to Axe.
right.
And I don't know. You probably do know, Scott. I don't know if Damian Lewis left because of his wife dying. Because of Helen McCrory got ill and died of cancer.
Right.
So I don't know if that was why or
That
not.
was
But
that was part. I think that played a major part because when that happened, he just wanted to go home and just stay in England for the time being, and
Right.
that wasn't going to work for the show at that point. So he left the show. And when you got to this season, well, basically they were able to work that in for several episodes,
Right.
and then he does come here, but it's probably not. He probably wasn't here for very long. But yeah, I had forgotten that Helen McCrory was his wife, and then I actually realized it when I was like, wait, did he? I wonder why he left the show, because why would the show lose that character that I read?
Right.
Like, oh, okay, all right, I get it now.
I thought they did a good job of massaging it. But seeing him come back, it's almost like, his absence did make the heart grow fonder, that when he returned, there was a little bit of energy in seeing him come back.
Yes.
And this show did an excellent job of being very morally ambiguous about him. In that times you would think he was a piece of shit, and at other times you would root for him.
Yeah.
And so kudos to that. And at the end, I mean, it's almost like an election. Which bad guy do you vote for? Like, vote for the one that's less worse, right?
Right.
But the Axe character, and his office, the people in the office that have moved in and out of it throughout the years. I thought they assembled a nice bullpen in that office of sub characters that made it compelling. So I enjoyed it. I liked the last season. And I did think it was time for him and Giamatti, just like that being the dynamic. It had to end, because you can't just have that forever.
Right.
But so they sort of triangulated that in a different way. But I thought the ending really is where everybody would end up in real life. And I think that Koppelman and probably Andrew Ross Sorkin and most people know that, the guys with the billions, unless you're Sam Bankman-Fried, very rarely go down.
Right.
I mean, you have to be monumentally stupid, have terrible lawyers, and be a moron to go down. And the smartest guys with the best people win, and the guys who act too emotionally or silly lose. And Axe always could see the long game.
Right. One of the few things, one of the only things I wanted to point out that what probably made me enjoy the series and made it so very watchable. That's the thing about the show. I'm not claiming, because I'm watching Billions, and there's only a few months after watching the end of Succession, and I'm not by any stretch of the imagination, just like what I was saying before, when we're talking about a morning show or whatever the heck we were talking about, putting something in the same league as Succession, because Succession.
Wait. Are you saying Billions isn't top tier? Is that what you're saying, Scott?
No, I think the tier conversation is silly. Because I think there are some things that are really impressive about Billions that
Absolutely.
I actually enjoy more, perhaps. And I'll give you them right now. Well, I'll give you the silly thing, and then I'll give you the serious thing. The silly thing is 84 episodes, I believe. 84 episodes, which probably means there has to be, I would say, a minimum of 200, maybe 300 different movie references made throughout this series. References that I keep thinking, most people in the audience are not getting. And I love the fact that they would do that and they didn't care. Sometimes they'd explain it. Sometimes they wouldn't. And I'd be like, wait, I know that line from something. And I would literally look it up online and be like, oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Who knew that people in hedge funds were like such movie nerds? It was so impressive. The other thing that's really probably the thing I would commend the most about the series, just about. Other than a lot of fun use of music, by the way. A lot of fun use of music, by the way. When they ended with that Slayer song alone, well, I'm not, it's like, I don't ever listen to Slayer, but I kind of want to listen to this song. There are people sprinkled throughout this cast that I have enjoyed in different ways over the years, and I thought they all got really nice, good, meaty parts here. And we got to go right to the top. Other than beyond Lewis and Giamatti, who we've already mentioned, the person I used to adore the most back in the early days of Sons of Anarchy was easily Maggie Siff. I had a huge crush on her. Her first season 1 of Mad Men, when she's at the department store heiress type, whatever. I loved it. She's a fascinating character, and she might have more balls than any of the dudes on the show. Quite frankly, I think she's great. But let's just come on. How can we talk about the show before we end the podcast and me not talk about David Costa? How do you pronounce his name? Costabile, of course. Look, he's been mentioned on this podcast a number of times over the years because obviously he was Gale from Breaking Bad. And when me and Dan would discuss him, we would often bring up how different a character that was from his ice cold killer, that he appeared as on Damages back in the day. I didn't know he had this in his holster too. His character Wags is so much fun, steals every other scene he's ever in. I was astonished by how much I enjoyed him in such a part. And then throughout the series, you'll see hey, there's Glenn Fleshler as Oren, the lawyer, who usually plays scumbag killers or gangsters or whatever. And I really enjoyed him. Alan Havey, the comedian, the guy who had a late night comedy show, who, when Johnny Carson was doing his final episode, he just turned out the lights, and if you put on Comedy Central that night, it was just a darkened room, kind of like when Jamie just left her room a few moments ago. And there's like all these little things, and probably old Got's going to accuse me of being woke now, probably. I think Billions yeah, I see you laughing. Who knew that? And I'm going to say right now, I mean, I don't know what's going on in network TV, so maybe there's a few other characters like that, and or Quantum Leap certainly has a character like that. But a major important character, like one of the main characters on this show, who's a fascinating character. So hard to read, so hard. I love trying to figure out what they're going to do next and where they're going. So much great dialogue. Also a big scene stealer. Taylor Mason's the character. Asia Kate Dillon is the performer. We're getting into the world, it's a transgender thing, but so good. And the way they treat that character, and it's handled so believably in this world of, what was the description? High stakes finance, whatever. And I said, who thought that this would be the show that I think I feel has done the best job with that of any that I've seen, and certainly a character playing such an important part. One can go to so and so on, I don't know, Orange Is the New Black or something, or Laverne, but small character, minor, not many scenes. Taylor is a major character. I mean, one of the top 5 characters on the show. So I was really impressed by that. I'm glad I watched it. Very enjoyable. It was one of the best binges I've done in a while, because it was like, I gotta watch the next one. I gotta watch. I can't go to sleep. It's one of the shows I blame for my lack of sleep for the last few months. So I was glad I watched it. Top tier. I don't know, but what
Well,
is
you hit
top
on something
tier?
I always do, and that is the music in this show.
Hmm.
It is great. I mean, you have Bowie, you have the whole gamut, and I think it's hilarious. Do you recall the song in Billions before Angel of Death by Slayer closed the episode?
Oh gosh.
It's a great juxtaposition. It's a great
Yeah.
joke.
I forgot what it was, but I remember I really liked it. What the hell? Just tell me. I can't remember.
It's Beautiful Day by U2.
Yeah, because he was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Beautiful Day, and then they end with Angel of Death. It's so delicious. I mean, Koppelman, I think, is a guitar player, and I follow him. He's kind of seems like a really cool dude and really into music. And the music on that show is stellar, and it was wonderful. And there are comedians on that show. Dan Soder played a great
Right.
role.
Right.
As one of the dudes in the bullpen. And I forget. I know the comedian, the one that played Taylor's love interest, fairly well known comedian. That dated her.
Yeah. It was he had a Broadway show, and even
Yes.
I know the characters and I probably don't have him here because he wasn't in enough episodes. I know who you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean,
great.
they made a great use of people, and that was a surprising role. But I think, to speak to probably what I love about it, the Asia Kate Dillon character, is that her character was seen for being good at what they did, and Axe empowered them to do that.
Right.
And if I said that her a minute ago, I apologize, but I believe their pronouns are they, them.
Yep.
It wasn't, it was ability, talent, and he looked completely past anything else and treated them just like everyone else. And I thought the way that was handled was wonderful. So yeah, that was one of the things that the show should be, uplifted for. But yeah, it was enjoyable, and I thought the finale for what that show was, and that's not a slam, but I thought the finale ended really well, and it's an enjoyable watch.
Yeah. I forgot to mention, but I also, because we're speaking of someone like David Constable before, and such a dramatically different role for him. I also want to give a little shout out to all actors. The dude, what's his name? I have it right in front of me. Actor's name is Stephen Kunken. He's the one who plays Ari Spyros, who's basically almost every scene with him is he's more and more of a cringeworthy schmuck that's just goofy and weird. And that's the same guy who plays one of the most horrible, horrible, horrible characters in all of The Handmaid's Tale. So it's like, oh, so he can play pretty much, just pure evil and pure ass, pure idiot. Nice. Really nice. And also,
Yeah.
And Terry Kinney playing the really ice cold handler. And I keep going, wait, he's threatening? McManus is now a threatening dude? But then there's another show that I actually just watched. And if Dan was there, he'd be so happy. I actually binged 2 seasons of The Mayor of Kingstown. And if I'm getting my shows right, hopefully I'm not confusing shows. Oh, no, I am confusing shows. Never mind. That's Justified he appeared on, right? Was it Justified he was the gangster? So apparently Terry Kinney's done a career turn, and instead of playing the limp-wristed weak schmuck, he just plays badass killer motherfuckers. It's really cool.
Yeah. And just to mention a few more before we end, I mean, don't forget we had a run with Jerry O'Connell makes an appearance in Billions. You have Eric Bogosian.
Oh, yeah.
Had a substantial run in it.
I always like Bogosian.
Yeah, I like Bogosian a lot. And yeah, Clancy Brown, made a run. And Rob Morrow. I mean, God, we haven't seen Rob Morrow in forever.
Right. And I had the same thought, especially because he looks fine. It's like, wow.
Oh, God, he looks great.
I mean, again, I haven't looked up IMDb. For all I know, Rob Morrow has been on a regular on a series that I'm just not aware of, which is always possible because there's so many damn series out there. But yeah, when you start to fill out the cast, and Jeffrey DeMunn is his dad, who I was like, he's one of the. We were just talking about how Flanagan has his always has his players. I always thought of him being the guy who Darabont would always go to, because he's in a lot of Frank Darabont movies, and obviously he brought him in when they started The Walking Dead, because he was the old dude who ends up getting killed in the season that spelled the end for the show anyway, season 2. No, like I said, very enjoyable show. Here's how I'll mock the top tier thing a little bit. As far as, and it goes hand in hand with what I was saying about my feelings about Showtime in general. It's a top tier Showtime show. For all the shows that I've watched over the years on Showtime, I would put it at that level. I'd put it at the level, Homeland season 1, I think, would be there, and then kind of falls off, season to season. Still some enjoyable performances, but it gets more like, it becomes less believable, more like 24 or something at a certain point. Dexter, we know how Dexter was, and then we know what ended up happening. Me and Jamie, maybe all three of us, Your Honor, which obviously has a stellar cast, and I just wish they had the scripts that kind of that matched the cast, especially the first season. I actually like the second season better. But you know what I mean? But this, I think this ended up, of all the Showtime series that I've watched over the years, this one just turned out to be the most enjoyable one, and that's what kind of worked. Yeah, okay. I think, unless there's anything else, I think I want to, because I did.
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah. Although I did like Mary Kingston. Just, it's not the most subtle piece of storytelling.
No.
And I think I get the impression that maybe that's, because what's his name is behind that one too? Taylor Sheridan? That his name?
Yeah.
Who's basically behind like every other show now, I guess, whatever. And I like, oh wait, he's the one who did Hell and High Water? Oh shit, I really like that movie. That's better than all the stuff I've watched so far. In that 1880 whatever movie. But you know what? Damn compelling. I hope Jeremy Renner's recovery, keeps going in the positive direction for that horrible accident he had. So maybe can be a third season of it.
Yep.
Okay. So wrapping up, future pods. We will be doing another one this week, covering 3 more TV series that have recently ended, and they all fall under the comic booky superhero genre. So we're looking at Gen V, Loki, and Doom Patrol, i.e., 3 shows that we should have been doing podcasts about in the first place if Scott, wasn't like coughing like a maniac for the last couple of months. And of course, as many of our listeners know, Fargo is coming back. It's coming back with a 5th season. It's going to premiere with 2 episodes over on Tuesday, November 21st. Yikes, that's coming soon. That's Thanksgiving week, god damn it. So hopefully we'll try to get her done in maybe Wednesday night so it can be ready for y'all before you dig into your Thanksgiving turkey, or else it's going to have to be later. All right, official wrap up is, if you enjoyed this podcast, you'll also enjoy hanging out on our Facebook page. Look us up. It's the Serious TV Drama Podcast page. We're also available on most podcast platforms. You can find us especially on podbean.com, and you can access all 390, of our episodes. And if you happen to use Apple Podcasts, feel free to rate and review us there. You can find us on Instagram, Serious TV Drama is one word, and on X Twitter. That's what I call it. Because it makes sense, because it's X Twitter, right? It's not Twitter anymore. It's X Twitter. I'm so smart. Our handle there is at STVD Podcast. STVD, of course, as in Serious TV Drama. So I want to very much thank the two of you for reuniting, so.
It feels so good.
He shoots, he scores. All that. Your son would be proud. Looking forward to recording once again with you shortly. Now, I feel there's only one way to end this podcast. And of course, what's the best way to end a podcast? With a poetry reading, of course. So, because that's the way most major podcasts end, don't they? Isn't that a thing?
I knew you loved someone named Annabelle Lee.
You know, the PO on podcast comes from poem. It used to be, but they sure used to be poems cast.
Poemed. You've been poemed.
See, it would be the word poem, then an apostrophe, D, cast. Poemed.
We're going to change this to the STVP podcast.
Oh, and then the cancer came. All right. That should have been, that'll be the next poem. All right, let's see if I can do this without coughing. So, it seems to make sense. We began this talking about the fall of the House of Usher, and the episodes that began and closed that kind of were a nod, both a quote and then overall to the Raven. So we will end this podcast with the final words of the Raven. And the Raven never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws its shadow to the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Good night, everybody.